chapter from the book, which is just sort of introductory material, but I thought I'd start with it, just so we know. So an ethical hacker, we've already talked about. An ethical hacker is somebody that has the permission of the target, and then they ought to have the same skills as an unethical attacker, and hopefully better. Criminals love to brag about how smart they are and how all the cops are stupid, and that is pretty much because they fool themselves, but it's just something to do with the psychological makeup that causes them to be criminals. By the way, I might as well throw something at you that all the people in LulzSec hated. If you are a criminal, you are a rotten hacker, in my opinion, because the human society is another structure, just like your computer. And when you choose to be a criminal and have to hide your name and have the cops hunting after you, you've made your life miserable for no good reason. Whatever you're trying to accomplish, if you just do it legally, life will be a lot better. And when I tell this to hackers, they just get mad at me and abuse me and call me names and say, that doesn't count. Only the computer counts. If you do something wrong on a computer, you're stupid. But if you do something wrong in human society, you're not stupid. That proves you're smart. And I think it's a deep psychological issue here, but this is the fundamental problem of this business is the people that get into hacking and computer technology are typically on the Asperger's spectrum. They do that because somewhere early in life they found out that it's no fun to go play with the other kids. I'm going to stay in my computer in my room and use my computer. And I was the same. These are people where logic and math works, and people just seem senseless and confusing because you're just less able to properly perceive the emotions and feelings of other people. So people just seem to be getting mad for no reason and bothering you, and logic and computers seem to be working for you, so you go to this and you tell yourself that doesn't matter. And this is something you have to get over at some point. But anyway, it's a big issue. These crazed hackers that do incredibly stupid things, like LulzSec. They hacked into the FBI. The original gang of LulzSec, the crazy destructive arm of Anonymous, was 8 people. And then one day they went in a chat room and they said, we're going to hack the FBI. And 2 or 3 of them quit. They said, are you out of your mind? I was on board with hacking Sony, but if you hack the FBI, we're all going to go to jail. Are you nuts? And they left. And that's totally what happened. They hacked the FBI and they all went to jail. But most of them could not see what any of us could see is, don't mess with the FBI. Are you insane? Because even if you're smarter than them, it doesn't matter. They got helicopters and guns, and they will get you. You know, they got an army of people will hunt you down. Don't do that. Anyway, so ethical hacking are people employed to perform penetration tests and people that are testing products before they get out for sale, hopefully. So penetration test is a legal authorized attempt to break into a company, and penetration tests are required. If you take credit card numbers more than, I think, 400,000 transactions per year, you are required to have an annual penetration test to find your weaknesses. Now, penetration tests are kind of insane because every competent penetration tester has a success rate of 100%. They always get in. If you have a penetration test and the penetration tester fails to get in, that proves they were incompetent. There is always a way in. And that means it's kind of nuts, and that is something I've been careful to mention to all my classes that I can remember, is I have to caution you that there's a very strong argument that everything I'm teaching you is bullshit. Because this is not a science, this is more of an art. There are no security metrics. It would be nice if we could say, I've analyzed your company and you're currently a 5. But if you pay $1 million and buy this gadget, you'll go up to a 6. And that will prevent $10 million worth of loss this year. And we don't have any of that. In fact, there are people that do objective studies, and they show that putting on all the patches and upgrading your firewalls doesn't in fact do any good because other vulnerabilities are what's letting the bad guys in anyway. It's all based on sort of an intuition that if you fix the problems you can see and put in better defenses, you would like to think that that would slow down the hackers. And this was made incredibly obvious in 2010 when Google spilled the beans. There was an open secret for 5 years before that everyone knew but no one would talk about, which is China is hacking everybody. And Google got so mad when China hacked them that they went public with it around Christmas of 2010. And that means everyone could finally talk about it. And everybody found the Chinese people hacking into their systems. And then I went to a meeting, Cornerstones of Trust, where they had the CEOs of all the major corporations there and the major security companies like Symantec and stuff were up there. And these people said, all right, we paid your $100,000 a year and your $1 million starting cost to buy enterprise class firewalls from you, and we all got hacked. What's wrong with this picture? And they had no answer at all. They just had complete lies that came from the marketing department. I couldn't believe it. They stood there with a straight face in 2011, and they said, within 6 months, we are going to have a product you can buy and put on your network which stops all attacks on the line with artificial intelligence not based on signatures. And I said, you gotta be kidding. This is what happens to the marketing department when the technical people got nothing, so they just let them go. And but that's something in the next century they're talking about. And now there are techniques, but it's not easy. And the fact is, so you have to give up this idea that you can protect yourself. What you have to do is go down, think about this. You've got employees that steal. They make copies on the Xerox machine, they make personal calls on the phone, they steal the pens and pencils, some of them steal the money, some of them steal the computers. And you don't shut down the business and go cry, you just accept it. You put in some controls and you just accept there's gonna be some level of employee theft. So that's the way it is with hacking. Some of our machines have been hacked all the time and you cope with it. You accept the fact, and therefore you have layers of defenses. You have relatively untrusted machines with people surfing the web and opening email and dangerous things like that, and then you have a boundary, and the more secure machines are in layers of more and more security where you don't let them connect directly to the internet and all that jazz, and you accept that some of your machines are probably compromised and you try to limit how bad the damage goes, just like you do with other bad things that are happening, like people getting sick and people stealing things and on. So that's where we are now. Yeah.
The about the Chinese attacks.
Yeah.
It's not the. It's just individuals from that country that are.
No, it's their official military doing it, and we even have videos, and they're absolutely brazen. You don't even hide the IP addresses. They will. The military bases have colleges next to them, and in that college there are computer programmers in classes like this, and they have videos of in-class hacking into American websites with teachers showing them how to do it. And when we accuse them, they say, "Oh no, we're not doing it." There's an interesting psychology. I think in countries that have a lot of propaganda, they're just used to being able to lie in a more bold way than even they do here. So they just say, "No, you're just lying. We didn't do that." When they totally did it, didn't even cover their traces at all, because they know that their own press can't say a word about it. So it doesn't, and there are no laws. Well, I'm amazed because what else all happened is China hacked into Google, Google found it, and Google hacked the Chinese server back and stole it all back, and then they found not only their stuff, but everybody else's. Microsoft, Adobe, Cisco, everybody stealing everybody. Then they called all this, "Hey dude, the Chinese are stealing all your stuff too, and you didn't even notice." And I talked to the Secret Service agent, one of them involved here, came and gave a talk here. And I said, "Wasn't that illegal?" And she said, "Yes, and we told Google not to do that." But the fact is there is no law. There's no body above us. There's no court above us. If you go across an international boundary, especially with nations that aren't very friendly, there is no law. It's just the jungle. Anyway, so that's the madness of international stuff. So a penetration test is trying to break into a system as sort of a theatrical event to prove that you can do something, and you have some goal defined in your pen test, usually to become the domain administrator. It might be to read the CEO's email or something. You have this thing that we're supposedly have protected, and you're going to find a way in, and then we can know one of our weaknesses better. That's the idea. A security audit is a more logical thing where you go have a long checklist and you make sure that you have a firewall and your stuff is up to date and you change your passwords and the passwords are long enough and that you actually lock the doors and stuff like this. And that is more normal. And the main point of security audits is for compliance. If you are in a regulated industry, which is like a bank or medical industry, then there is a whole body of rules you must follow. And you have to say that I did this, I did this, I did this. There's certain standards you must meet, and if you don't meet them, then you can have fines for failing to meet the standards. So, by the way, when I have visiting speakers talk, we'll have them here, we have them in each of these classes, for the industry, one of the common questions they get from the audience is, what about work-life balance? And all my visiting speakers have said the same thing. They say, I don't know what that is, I haven't seen my family in years, I work all the time. And students, a good portion of students are not happy with this answer because they aren't really looking for that kind of career. And the Netflix guy came and gave a talk here. Netflix is one of the top security companies, really. They're very secure in the network. And he had a good answer. He said, if you would like to go home at 5, move over to compliance and legal and financial. Those people, the job is comparatively boring, but they get to go home at 5. And somebody has to do it. And they are very weak technically. They would love to have you. And helping people do this compliance. Have we really met the legal standards? Here's these 100 things we have to do. Have we really done them? How do we do them? How do we prove that we've done them? That's got to be done, and that's not a constant emergency like network administration and hacking and stopping hackers. It's like a steady job. So that's an option if you'd like actually work-life balance. Anyway, so hackers are people that break into things. Crackers are the people that destroy things, and on it goes. Ethical hackers are the ones that do all this legally because they have the permission of the target. Now, script kiddies are what people call people who use attacks without even understanding them, and this is what almost everybody in Anonymous was. They would just participate. One of the things that got me really mad at Anonymous is they got teenagers to participate in their attacks, and the official documentation that came at the low orbit ion cannon, which is one of their tools, said when we attack someone, their server will go down and all the logs will be destroyed, so they won't be able to catch you. And that is bullshit. Total bullshit. And when people attacked Sony, all their IP addresses were totally on log, and they just handed it to the FBI, and they just took the volume of traffic and arrested the top 2,000 and let the rest go. But I mean, it's really disgraceful to totally lie to people and trick them into joining your criminal army and use them like expendable bullets where you go to prison and I laugh. Anyway, but that's the script kiddies that do something without even understanding what they're doing. More experienced penetration testers, most of them use tools that other people wrote, and they understand how they work. And some people write their own tools, which is, like I say, that's a more advanced thing, learning something like Python or Perl well enough where you can write a new thing or modify an existing tool to do something unusual. And we try to get to the beginnings of that in some of the more advanced classes. So like I say, you'll at least learn how to use tools here, and you'll hopefully learn how to understand them. So you'll be somewhere between the script kiddie and the real expert, and the later classes get you closer to being an expert. But if you take everything here and get an A in it, you're still not to being a professional pen tester, not even close. You're just getting started. That's true of all our classes, by the way, like the Linux system administration and Windows system administration. You're not learning enough to really be on the job. You're learning a start. And when you get on the job, you'll have to do a lot of training on the job. I'm sorry about that, but that's the way it is. We are unable to keep up with the realistic demands of the real market. And everybody that employs people know that. One of the cliches of every business is, we hired the new kid, they just got out of college, they think they know everything, they don't know anything. So the first thing we have to do is take them down a peg. Look, we're doing like all these things you never heard of that are better than that junk they taught you in college. And don't have that attitude like you're smarter than us because you got to learn what's really happening at our network. Anyway, so people have their own test group of tools, pen testers develop them, but these days most people just use Corley Linux. Corley Linux is the standard in America that has gathered almost all the tools you need in one handy package. So some people do white box tests where you actually get information like the network diagram before you go in, but what makes more sense usually is the black box model where you have to attack just like the criminals. You don't have access to anything, figure it out. And I must say, after you learn hacking tools, it's great. Like when I was teaching Cisco labs how to diagnose networks, like you have a port, you don't know the addresses or anything, man, hacking tools are a thing, man. You can totally scan in and find everything. Before I knew hacking tools, I was sort of helpless. Like, gee, if I don't have a diagram or know what address to put on, what do you do? Anyway, and now, now people just get me to give them accounts on the machines around here because rather than going through the IT department, because it's much easier to hack in than to go through official channels. Anyway, so there's a lot of certifications. Security Plus and Net Plus are good beginning certifications. They're part of our core here. And then there's Certified Ethical Hacker, and CISSP is the best one to get and maintain. That's the one I actually pay the fee and submit the continuing education to keep that one alive, because that one really matters. That's the union card of this business. Anyway, and SANS, by the way, has a lot of really excellent classes, but they are really expensive. So you can't take them until your boss is paying for it. Same thing's true of Black Hat, the security convention I've never been to. It's like $2,000 to get in, and then you only have fun if you pay like $10,000 to pay for some SANS classes. So if you're at a corporation and your boss is paying, that's fine, but otherwise, I've never seen the inside of it. Although, by the way, I know people that sneak in. But anyway, I think they're getting to crack down on that a bit. Anyway, so there are laws. The technology laws are fantastically bad, especially the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And I was at another meeting a few weeks ago in Vegas. The EFF and the law enforcement community was there talking about this, and they said, the guy from the law enforcement community, from the Department of Justice, he really said this. He said, well, yes, technically everything you're doing is illegal, but see, we don't prosecute bad people, good people. We only prosecute the bad ones, so you can trust us with prosecutorial discretion not to bother punishing you unless you're really bad. And like, this is really not comforting me at all. I've been telling my students for years that this is, in China, they have a law, and the law says something like, it is illegal for you to spread information that harms the people by causing them to lose faith in their government. So nobody knows what that means. So people start writing blog posts on Twitter and playing games and saying mean things about the government, and then they do a little more and a little more, and every few years they come in and lock them up, and everyone shuts up for a couple of years, and then they start a little more, because nobody knows where the edge is. And unfortunately, it's just the same here. The CFAA outlaws almost everything of the slightest interest, so in reality, you can do things that are completely legal, like on your own machine in your own closed network. That's completely legal, but anything that involves anybody else's stuff at all is probably illegal. So I used to find problems at colleges. I founded a bunch of colleges, and I would notify the colleges, you have a security problem, you should fix it. And eventually, I found a bunch of health data on an open server at the University of Louisiana. They had a FTP server that just had patient medical records, 2,000 of them, just wide open. No password, no nothing. And so I contacted their HIPAA compliance office and said, hey, this is not right. And within 5 hours, they took it down. And I said, there, that was a good deed. And a few months later, calls came into the college that I must be immediately fired because I'm an evil hacker and I hacked them. And I made a breach by hacking into their hospital and exposing their data. That was their official legal statement of explaining what happened. And I couldn't get anything, I couldn't get them to shut up. I couldn't get the press to stop telling me an evil hacker. So I talked to my lawyer, and my lawyer said, well, technically that's true. If you Google for something and you click on the link and you see something you shouldn't see, you've broken the CFAA. You have now connected to a server. If you connect to a server that is used in interstate commerce, which is any computer on the internet, and you get information from that server that you are not authorized to have, you have now broken the law. It does not matter if there was any security barrier in sight, if they put it in plain sight. So that's when I switched from that kind of work and I started analyzing Android apps, because that's not going to their server, it's analyzing the local app, but it's very annoying, and the result is almost every interesting research project is illegal right now. And so what happens is companies take a risk. The Rapid7 that makes Metasploit, that we're going to be using, a fantastic hacking tool, they have a project where they scan the entire internet every day for vulnerabilities, and they go, if they find open net BIOS ports, they connect to them and find the running processes on the machine to see what kind of Windows malware they're infected with, and they publish this data. And I said, how can they do that? They do it in partnership with the Department of Homeland Security. And they have a page on the legality of this written by Jennifer Granick. And Jennifer Granick is one of the main leading lights in computer law. And I said, boy, I want to read what she has to say about this. And she said, this is illegal. There's no question. What we're doing here absolutely breaks the law, but we have made a business decision to accept that risk. And in order to mitigate the risk, we have published the results to the world and given talks and tried to make everyone understand that we're doing a good thing, so please don't sue us. But the plain fact is, if people start suing us, we're totally breaking the law by doing this. And that's what I thought. And you can do that if you're a private individual, but I can't do it as a teacher in front of a public institution with deep pockets, so I try to make sure that none of your homework is illegal. And by the way, lockpicking is legal, and possession of lockpicks is legal in California as long as you don't use them in an evil intent, as long as you aren't actually breaking into something. So otherwise, I wouldn't be able to teach that in an official way, which is what I'm planning to do. So anyway, it's good to know the law. It is very difficult to really stay within the law. I used to be famous as one of the white hats that never broke the law, and I have to admit I found out a bunch of the stuff I was doing was in fact illegal, which was really annoying. But the law is just really a blunt instrument. And it's not because they're stupid or ill-intentioned. It's because suppose you try to write down what's illegal. Like, I don't want someone coming on my machine and installing software that I don't know anything about without asking me first. That sounds good, except that's what Windows Update does. So exactly what makes a virus totally different than Windows Update? Now, how do you really define that? That turns out to be nearly impossible. So they punted and they settled in the CFAA for, if you do more than you're authorized to do. What does that mean? That means the people who write the website get to do it, but they didn't even say that they had to write down the rules anywhere. So anything that they claim is their rules of authorization. So what people told me, and I didn't believe it, but I found it true, if you go to a website and you do anything that exceeds their perceived terms of service, you do anything that they didn't expect you to do, it's illegal. But you won't go to prison for something like that, because that's a minor infraction. As long as you're not an idiot, you're not really doing any harm, and you cooperate with your lawyer, you'll probably be able to get off. But you do need an attorney, and it's not like you're totally on the good side of the law. It's an issue. And this is not going to get better anytime soon. Right now, nothing can get through Congress, and the only thing the Obama administration has been interested in doing is making the law tougher. What Obama tried to do 3 years ago was to make hacking a RICO offense. I don't even understand how RICO exists in America. RICO blatantly violates the Fourth Amendment, in my opinion, but RICO makes it a crime to associate with criminals. So you couldn't teach this class, you couldn't go to DEF CON, you couldn't, just associating with hackers would be a crime. And that's what he wanted, but he didn't get it, because nothing can get through Congress. So nobody has any interest in lowering the penalties right now, because they all think they're going to stop hacking by making more penalties. Anyway, So port scanning is where you just send a lot of packets to a server to try to get replies to see what doors are open. And this, no one's ever been prosecuted for this. Although if you were really trying hard, you might be able to make a CFA violation out of it, but no one ever has. The only thing is if you do it with thousands of packets per second and actually bring down the server, now that's a crime. That's a denial of service attack. City College has a computer use policy. Everybody has an acceptable use policy that limits what you can do on their network, and this means, you know, you can't run viruses on a network, you can't put illegal software on the machines, you know, you can't run denial of service attacks on our network, and all that jazz. There are federal laws out there. The computer hacking and intellectual property is one of them, but the CFAA is the main one. The CFAA is the one that leads to all of the scandalous cases, like the guy at MIT that stole a whole bunch of scientific journals to violate their copyright and put them on the web, and they threatened him with 30 years in prison under the CFAA, and he panicked and killed himself. And I, among other things, I fault his defense lawyer there, because your defense team should explain to you, look, when the government tells you you're going to spend 30 years, that's like an opening bid at an auction. You're really going to end up with a 6-month suspended sentence after we get him down. But if you're not really going away for 30 years, but he thought he was really going away for 30 years and killed himself, and that's pretty shameful, you know, because what he did was not in any way that bad. But anyway, that's the game. And of course, these other things like the Patriot Act, as we know, have had an enormous effect lowering our defense against government intrusions in the hopes of stopping terrorism. Anyway, certainly it's illegal to spread worms or viruses, break into someone else's machine, go past any kind of barrier like a password barrier, and do something to other people's systems that prevent them from working so they can't get business done. All those things are obviously illegal, and they should be. So if you are going to do any kind of pen test, you get a contract from your customer and you try to make sure you've covered this, just like if you have someone coming to fix your roof, they want a contract so that if they break things and make it worse, if they fall off the roof and get hurt, you have some arrangement about who's going to pay for that and whose fault it is. Otherwise, when bad things happen, you're going to not enjoy the argument you have. That's the game. So you need to be smart technically, and you need to be able to communicate with people. This is why most pen testing happens on teams. You have some technical nerds that know how to do it, but are sort of crazy and have holes and piercings everywhere and tattoos and wear offensive t-shirts and can't talk to anybody. And then you have some guy in a suit who can talk to management and fill out the legal forms and stuff, and he doesn't let you see this guy. This guy doesn't. Another thing is, another open secret in the business, is these guys are usually felons, criminals that have been convicted for hacking. Everybody hires them, and they try to conceal this. And through layers of like, no, we hired a contractor, and the contractor hired them. We don't actually hire any criminals. We'd never do a rotten thing like that. But in fact, if you try to get the people that really know how to get in, quite a few of them are in fact criminals that you hope have gone straight. And if you go to security cons, some of them are pretty shady still. So that's that chapter, and I think my plan here is to stop this recording, and then we'll talk, and then I'll start you guys picking locks. Now, you don't have to do the lock picking. Let's do this is chapter 1, 123. All right. The